Have you ever had one of those moments when you think back to a movie that you watched as a kid and absolutely loved? Then as an adult, you think to yourself, was that movie really all that good? So you go back to rewatch it and you come to realize that it's even better than you remembered? I sincerely hope so, considering I've had more than a few myself. However, I have to say that the most surprising one for me was Pokémon the first movie. It was at a time when I was wondering if any of the shows or movies I watched as a kid could really hold up to today's standards, and seeing as Pokémon was one of the shows that I was watching at age 7, I was more than a little worried that I wouldn't like it anymore, especially because it was my favorite show on at the time, trumping that of even Power Rangers. And when I finally got to see the Pokémon movie for the first time, it blew my 9-year-old mind out of the water, further cementing my fanaticism for the show. But then I turned to the ripe old age of 19, a full 10 years after Pokémon the first movie first hit theaters, and I started to ask myself the question I posed before. Was the first Pokémon movie really all that good? Seeing as it was my favorite movie at the time, I was understandably anxious about watching it with a more adult brain. In the end, though, I did eventually rewatch it. And when I did, I found even more to like about it and fell in love with it all over again. Fast forward 8 more years to present day, and I began to wonder if anyone else shared my current fondness of the movie. And to my dismay, it turns out they didn't. Don't get me wrong, they still like the movie for the most part, but everyone seems to think it gets bogged down from its contradictory moral of fighting is bad. And they have a fair point. There is a section in the movie where almost every character is saying that line in one way or another.
Pokemon aren't meant to fight. Not like this.
Why can't Mewtwo understand it's not right to force Pokemon to battle this way?
This just proves that fighting is wrong.
However, that's not what I pulled from it. What I got was a moral that was slightly more complex, but more effective. Everyone is born equal, and no matter where you come from, you ultimately get to decide who you become. It's a message that, honestly, we don't hear too often, but this movie does an excellent job of delivering it. From the beginning, Mewtwo is told that he is the most powerful Pokemon in the world.
You are greater than you, improved through the power of human ingenuity.
And is also basically told that he is a weapon that is meant to be controlled. It's pretty obvious that Mewtwo isn't too fond of this idea, considering that not long after that, he goes and does this, and this. After which he starts to question what his true reason for being is.
Who am I? What is my true reason for being?
But even after all the talking and wondering about what his purpose is, he comes to the conclusion that he should be the weapon that he was made as, but use his power for his benefit alone.
I will find my own purpose and purge this planet of all who oppose me.
What Mewtwo becomes is essentially the complete antithesis of Ash. I mean, just think about it. Mewtwo is born in a laboratory where he is straight up told what his so-called purpose is, while Ash grew up in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by nature, and is told very early on, or at least believes, that you can be whatever you want, as long as you work at it. You actually get to see this play throughout the show. Almost everywhere Ash goes, he's bluntly told that he is the underdog, that no matter what, he will never measure up.
Well, Ash, you snooze, you lose, and you're way behind right from the start.
You have no idea what you're doing. It'll be a long time till you're a Pokemon Master.
Compared to those other 3, novice here is a joke.
But through perseverance and a lot of determination, he eventually makes it to the Indigo Plateau and the Pokemon League, where he gets knocked out in the first round of the tournament. But still, he had to win 4 prior qualifying matches just to get there, one in which he didn't lose a single Pokemon, and it's still just really impressive. But what it also shows is that only Ash could really decide what would become of him and how far he got. And even if you do look solely at the movie, you get the same thing. Once again, our first shot of Ash is him with his friends surrounded by nature being challenged by a guy he doesn't know to a Pokemon match, which he eagerly accepts. And what exactly do we see in this match? Well, we see Ash, using only Stage 1 Pokemon, defeat his challenger, who, by the way, is using all fully evolved Pokemon. It's a great way of non-verbally telling us that Ash is a person who overcomes adversity. Now compare that to Mewtwo's first shot on screen. Yes, he's with people, but none of them are friends. just scientists wanting to use and perform experiments on him. He is also surrounded by test tubes and machinery on all sides. It's a pretty cold and isolating place, and when Giovanni comes along, he only makes matters worse by calling Mewtwo his partner, making him think that they're equals.
Those fools thought you had a science experiment. But I see you as a valuable partner.
Partner?
And then tells him that they could never be equals because he was created.
You were created by humans to obey humans. You could never be our equal.
You know, now that I think about it, there are actually a lot of undertones throughout the movie that deal with social class, and they only help to reinforce the moral. Mewtwo firmly believes that his clone Pokemon are the superior ones, aka higher class. He even goes as far as to say that the original Pokemon are pathetic and inferior, aka lower class. And honestly, he has every reason to think that. He himself is a clone Pokemon that has never gone against a non-clone that he did not easily overcome, and has always been told he is the better Pokemon. This scenario kind of flips the whole social class notion on its head, where in the beginning, Mewtwo is the victim of being in the lower class as he was being manipulated and told he would never be more than what he was created to do, and now believes he is in the higher class almost as if being created, rather than born, makes him superior in every way. Now throw Ash into the mix who, as I said before, believes in hard work paying off and overcoming adversity, and what you have just set up for the main conflict is the battle of ideals. And right from the start, it looks as though Mewtwo's ideals went out with the battle of the 3 starter Pokemon, where Venusaur, Blastoise, and Charizard go against their cloned counterparts and get utterly trounced. Once the battle is over, Mewtwo celebrates by capturing all the Pokemon that were brought to the island and proceeds to clone them. For one, this is another way that Mewtwo shows dominance over everyone attending, which can correlate to how the upper class has ultimate power over the lower class. He even verbally confirms this idea by saying,
It is no use. It is futile to try and escape my power.
As Ash tries to save Bulbasaur and Squirtle by returning them to their Pokeballs. But more importantly, it also sets up my favorite scene and the climax of the entire movie, the final battle. It's in this fight of clones versus originals that we get to see the end result of Mewtwo's beliefs, and what we get is kinda surprising. Normally what would happen in a movie like this is the hero finally overcomes the big baddie and saves the day, with the original Pokemon overpowering the clone Pokemon. But here's the thing. Can you tell who's winning at all? Can you tell which ones are the clones and which ones aren't? You can't, can you? All the clone Pokemon besides Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur look identical to their counterparts. It's impossible to tell them apart. This always confused me as a kid because I couldn't tell if the good guys were winning or not. But that's the point the fight was trying to make. There are no good guys or bad guys in this fight. No one is better or worse than the other. All we get to see is a group of Pokemon who look exactly the same, who have been pitted against each other by way of birth. This point is made even more obvious by Meowth's talking with himself monologue.
You mean we don't have to fight with each other? But how can I trust you? You was born different. You're right. We do have a lot in common. The same earth, the same air, the same sky. Maybe if we started looking at what's the same instead of always looking at what's different, well, who knows?
The only other Pokemon to make this realization is Ash's Pikachu, who is flat out refusing to fight his clone. When Ash sees what his Pikachu is doing and not wanting to see any more Pokemon get hurt, despite whether or not they're clones, he does the only thing he can think of. He runs into the middle of the fight to try and stop it, but ultimately gets petrified in the process. And you can tell right away that this straight up confuses Mewtwo to the point where he stops what he's doing. And the very next thing that happens still gets to me to this day. Pikachu, in a desperate attempt to save his friend, starts to electrocute him time and time again, but to no avail. It's only when Pikachu has used up the last of his electricity that he finally gives up. It's at this moment that all the Pokemon, clone and original alike, start to mourn and cry for the fallen trainer, and Mewtwo gets to experience something he's never known before: compassion. And it's through this act of unified compassion that brings Ash back from the brink of death. For Mewtwo, this is that click moment. Finally, all the lights are on and he sees that he's turned into what he was trying to get rid of. It's also through Ash and Pikachu's heartwarming embrace that he comes to see what Ash has known from the start. I would tell you, but I think Mewtwo says it best.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
Hello, me again, and thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. I really do hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. And hey, if you want to see more content like this in the future, please let me know by leaving a comment down below and subscribing. It really does go a long way into helping me out and letting me know that I'm doing the right thing by making these videos. And if you disagree with me at any point during the video, please leave a comment down below as well. I'm actually quite curious to hear what your input is. Or maybe you want to watch another video that I made. Here's one I did on Meizan Ikoku not too long ago. I mean, it's not one of my best works, but I think it's pretty good. Anyways, until then, I'll see you next time.